1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton set out to do something no human being had ever done: cross the entire frozen continent of Antarctica on foot. And he planned to do it with absolutely zero modern technology. No GPS, no radios, just a crew of 27 men and a wooden ship. The plan was ambitious. They would sail to the continent's coast, land via the Weddell Sea, and trek 2,900 kilometers straight across the South Pole to the other side. Before reaching the shoreline, the Weddell Sea hit them with an early, unusually dense freeze. Thick sheets of pack ice closed in around them, and their ship, the Endurance, was trapped. In a matter of days, the objective of the mission vanished. They were no longer trying to cross a continent to make history. They were just trying to survive the incoming winter. For months, the crew sat immobilized in a frozen prison. They endured 24-hour darkness and temperatures plummeting to -50°C, hoping the spring thaw would eventually release it. But nature had a different plan. The millions of tons of ice surrounding them began to violently shift and squeeze. The sheer pressure of the frozen ocean slowly warped the wooden hull of the Endurance, until finally it began splintering the ship to pieces. Shackleton ordered his men to abandon ship. They unloaded what they could onto the ice. They had 3 small rowboats, about a month's worth of food, and absolutely zero means of contacting the outside world. The original expedition was officially over. Their safety net was entirely gone, and the men found themselves marooned on a melting piece of ice in the middle of a lethal, freezing ocean. They set up what they called ocean camp right there on the ice floe. They lived like this for months, slowly drifting away from land. When their meager rations ran low, they were forced to make the grim decision to eat their own sled dogs. Then the Antarctic summer arrived. Temperatures rose, and the solid ground they were living on began to literally split apart beneath their feet. With their camp disintegrating into the ocean, Shackleton made a desperate call. The men loaded into their 3 tiny, heavy lifeboats and pushed out into a chaotic maze of massive, shifting icebergs in search of solid land. The ice they had relied on for a year was now actively trying to sink them, forcing them to brave the exact freezing waters they had been so desperately trying to avoid. After 497 agonizing days since they first set sail, the exhausted crew finally dragged their boats onto solid rock. They had reached a place called Elephant Island. But Elephant Island offered no salvation. It was a desolate, uninhabited rock located entirely outside of any human shipping lanes. If they stayed here, they would simply starve to death in isolation. Shackleton realized their only chance was to seek help himself. He decided to leave 22 men behind and row a modified 22-foot boat across 1,300 kilometers of open ocean to a whaling station on South Georgia Island. To get there, they had to navigate the Drake Passage. This is widely considered the most dangerous stretch of ocean on Earth. It is a zone notorious for swallowing massive commercial ships whole and churning out monstrous waves over 12 meters high. To rescue his stranded crew, Shackleton willingly steered a tiny wooden rowboat directly into a maritime meat grinder, knowing the statistical odds of coming out alive were basically zero. Miraculously, after 3 weeks of relentless storms and bailing water to stay afloat, they spotted South Georgia Island. But just as they approached, hurricane-force winds battered their boat, forcing them to crash land on the completely uninhabited side of the island. The whaling station they desperately needed was on the opposite coast. Between them and rescue stood a towering 10,000-foot range of jagged, heavily glaciated mountains that no human had ever mapped, let alone crossed. With their boat destroyed, sailing around the island was impossible, so they tied themselves with rope, took a single carpenter's axe, and hiked for 36 hours straight, hacking staircases into vertical ice. Just when they had survived the ocean, the environment threw up an unscalable wall. Yet these severely malnourished, foot-easing men managed to force their way over an untouched mountain range purely out of a refusal to die. When Shackleton and his 2 companions finally staggered into the Stromness whaling station, the workers there didn't even recognize them. Their hair was long, their faces black with soot and blubber smoke, their clothes in rags. But Shackleton didn't rest. He immediately began securing a ship to go back for the 22 men left behind on Elephant Island. It took him 4 agonizing months and 3 failed attempts, constantly being pushed back by the thick sea ice. before he could finally break through. Back on Elephant Island, conditions had deteriorated rapidly. The men were surviving under 2 overturned rowboats, suffering from frostbite, and one crew member even had to have his infected toes amputated. They were starting to lose hope, until one morning, a ship appeared on the horizon. When Shackleton finally reached the beach, he counted the figures standing on the shore. Every single one of them was there. Despite nearly 2 years of compounding lethal disasters, all 27 crew members survived. Sir Ernest Shackleton never crossed Antarctica on foot. The Endurance expedition failed its primary objective before it even touched the mainland. Yet it stands today as one of the most remarkable records of leadership ever documented, proof that sheer human willpower and teamwork can outlast the impossible.